Hi, everyone. Sorry for the delays that we had. Just one moment while we get things sorted out. All right, appears to be successful, so here we go. Welcome to this event with Body Politic. I'm super excited for it today. We are going to be talking about disability benefits with this incredible lawyer. Cassie Springer Ayeni is the president of Springer Ayeni, a professional law corporation. She represents people with disability, medical, and life insurance benefit claims under ERISA. She has dedicated her entire career to serving clients in need of employee benefit advocacy, particularly those with disabilities. Known for her ERISA experience, Cassie is a frequent speaker and author on the topic. She takes pride in building a record that often convinces insurance companies to reverse their own denials before a case even has to go to court. You can learn more about her at her website, www.benefitslaw.com. She also had a recent publication regarding COVID-19 and long-term disability cases called As the Numbers Rise, So Will the Disability Claims of Long Haulers, which was published in the CAOC forum. I'm super excited to welcome her here today. My name is Allison. I'm a Body Politic moderator with Post-Viral MECFS, who has been through the disability benefits process before, which is why I'm facilitating this conversation. So welcome, Cassie. If you want to turn on your video.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the introduction and welcome everybody. Really honored to be talking with you all today because this is such an important step in the process of how you can kind of maintain some security for yourself while you're going through this biggest challenge, perhaps, of your life. So I'm happy to help. I just want to tell you a little bit more about myself and why I wanted to partner with Body Politic, which is just a fabulous organization. I'm so proud of the work that you do. So I've been doing disability benefit claims for 18 years and almost exclusively disability benefits under ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which is a law that covers all employee benefits for all private employers in America. So it's really broad, even though most people haven't actually heard about it. And in my experience, back when I started doing this in 2002, people had a hard time getting approved for some of the disabilities that we now consider to be more commonplace and well-known. Those include chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, Lyme disease, even chemo brain and other cognitive impairing issues or disabilities that can take somebody out of the workforce. And so I'm looking at all of the symptoms that are being reported for long haulers and seeing how they align with some of those hard fought disability cases in the past. And I think it's imperative that we get it right from the start. And so I wanted to provide this education piece to everybody so that we can all unite together in educating doctors, insurance companies, and that helps me to educate the courts about why people with long haul COVID are going to be entitled to disability benefits potentially. So I'm going to start screen sharing if that's okay with you, Allison.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll share with everybody presentation I've put together. And I think that this will be available through Body Politic afterwards. So take notes if you want to, but don't feel like you have to copy everything down. You're also welcome to contact me. I've put my contact information on the front page. I'm in Oakland, California, but I am happy to talk to anybody who has an issue with their disability policies. Okay, so what is long haul COVID? I probably don't need to educate you much in this group, which is a welcome relief. But I am really happy to see that the CDC has now an itemized list of symptoms of long haulers, which is great because that means we're going to be able to cite that when we're making claims to insurance companies and to the courts as well. So thank you, everybody at Body Politic, for your work with the CDC to get them educated and get this list of symptoms up so quickly. It's great. But as you know, some of the most common ones we're seeing are fatigue, coughing, cognitive impairment, heart palpitations, organ involvement, and cognitive impairment is commonly known as brain fog. So that's where you can't remember the words or the memories aren't coming back clearly. That's something that I've heard quite a bit among my few clients who do have COVID and long haul COVID. So the likelihood of long haul COVID is it's not as small as we would all want it to be. So the CDC did an interview showing that symptoms persist at 2 to 3 weeks past diagnosis for 1 out of every 4 patients. And then perhaps anecdotally, but a physician at Cedars-Sinai in New York who's running a COVID clinic identified that he sees that symptoms persisting in 4+ weeks in 1 in 10 COVID patients. So that becomes the long hauler, the people who are not getting over this despite the infection perhaps having gone away, the active infection in the lab result. Looking at the CDC numbers in light of those statistics, it's scary, right? So first of all, these numbers I updated them just 4 days ago, and the total cases in the USA are 16,750,000, and that's gone up by another 500,000 in the last 4 days. I just checked it this morning. But using these numbers from 4 days ago on December 18th of 2020, that means if you look at the demographics that of the working age population, that is people ages 18 to 64, 75% of the infections are among that age group, which is about 12 million infections. And so if we're thinking about that 1 in 4 stat, that means that 3 million of those people still have symptoms a month out. And if we're looking at that 1 in 10 stat, that's 1.2 million working age adults who have not recovered from a COVID infection. And by the way, I first looked at these numbers for the article Allison mentioned earlier in September, and the numbers have doubled since then. So this is massive. And this is something that insurance is not expecting. Social security system's not expecting it. State disability programs are not expecting it. Workers' compensation programs are not expecting it. And private and employer-sponsored insurance carriers are not expecting all of these people with disabilities. They haven't accounted for it. And in my opinion, what that means is that they're going to start taking very aggressive stances towards people. And so we really need to be doing our best to provide as much information supporting a disability claim based on COVID, because quite frankly, insurance is not going to want to pay the claims. So we have to convince them to pay the claims. So why would you want to apply for disability? There's a stigma in our society and a misperception, I think, that disability means that you've given up. And it's not. It's not that. There are many, many, many very motivated, very educated, very talented people with disabilities in our country. And these are not people who have given up. These are people who are struggling like you with something that they didn't ever expect in their life. And it's derailed their careers potentially. So I'd like people to try to eliminate the stigma from your mind, and also to realize that invisible disabilities are very real and more present perhaps than what you might consider the iconic disability sign that we use on all of the placards around the country, right? Somebody in a wheelchair. Disabilities are not visible to everyone. So why would you want to apply for disability? Let's assume you've erased the stigma, which I hope. First of all, it's because your doctor thinks you need to be out of work for a period of time. So when people come to me and they are on the fence about whether they should apply, I don't say, well, do you want to apply? I say, what does your doctor think? And that's the question you should ask of your doctor as well. Do you think I need to take a leave in order to recover? Is it against my health interest to stay at work? And listen to your doctor's opinion on it. Now, of course, I'm assuming you have a good doctor, someone who believes in you, somebody who understands long COVID, somebody who's going to be on your side when you need her to be. So look for your doctor's recommendation and then go with that. It also helps take the decision-making away from you, which is, I think, where sometimes people get hung up because they don't want to say, I am disabled, I need this. So instead, just follow your doctor's orders. Your doctor says you need to take a leave, take the leave. But if you're looking to evaluate it for yourself too, you should consider whether working is impeding your recovery. Is it going slower because you're putting so much effort into work during the day and then crashing at night? Or if you're working from home, maybe you've spread out your hours over 24 hours a day in order to get 8 hours worth of work done. And that's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to be helpful to your health as well. So consider that. Consider whether working is a safety hazard. Are you endangering other people by being at work when you should be at home because you're more prone to mistakes, because you're not able to do the things that need to be done in your occupation to make it safe for your colleagues and for your clients? Maybe you're also making too many mistakes at work. If you're an accountant and you have brain fog, that's going to be a problem. Your malpractice insurance is going to be on the line. So consider whether the mistakes are not compatible with working. Or if you cannot concentrate and get through the day, that's another good sign that you need to consider disability, or that you simply don't have the stamina. That's the case again, where you're crashing at the end of the day because you put in so much effort, where you don't have a quality of life because you're devoting all of your energy to getting through a workday. These are all signs that you may need to consider applying for disability benefits. There are a lot of different sources of disability benefits, and I want to spend a little time going over each of these on this slide because this is so misunderstood. People don't understand how many sources of income are available if you have a disability and how to apply for those and how they coordinate together. So the ones I've been talking about under ERISA, those are short and long-term disability policies.
Cassie, could you zoom in on your slide just a little bit?
Oh,
There's a lot of text on
sure.
this one, and I just want to make sure folks can see it.
Yeah, let me do that.
Sorry to interrupt. This is
No, not at
fantastic.
all. Is that a little bit better? And then I can scroll.
Yes.
Okay, good. So short and long-term disability policies are provided by your employers. And actually 35% of the working population in private employers in America do have disability insurance benefits provided by your employer. You may not know it because when you signed up to work at your company, you probably didn't say, well, let me see what the disability policy is like because I'm probably going to need it in a few years. Nobody thinks like that, right? I mean, you go into it and you think you're going to be working till you retire, and that's just not always the case. So look into it. Even if you think you don't have disability insurance through your employer, you may just not have paid attention to it or really known about it. A lot of times employers even pay the premiums for this. It's a benefit that is provided along with every other benefit that we hear about more commonly that are actually all governed by ERISA, like pension benefits, your 401k is governed by ERISA, your health insurance, these are all benefits provided by your employer. And then your disability insurance policies. You may even have a life insurance policy given by your employer, which would be governed by ERISA. Okay, so those are two sources. You may also have a private disability insurance policy. You would probably know about this because you probably purchased it through your insurance broker or financial planner who advised you to purchase disability insurance maybe when you were considering a life insurance policy. So that's a source for you if you become disabled. Also, a number of states have state disability insurance. This is a system you pay into, at least here in California, and I think it's the same in most states that have this. It's a system you pay into with your payroll tax. So you've paid into it, which makes it kind of like insurance, right? You've paid into it through taxes. And I'll just use the example here in California. It provides a year of your income, up to 55% of your income, up to a max of, I think, $5,800 a month. And it's not taxable here in California. And it can be a really good mechanism for getting you through a time when you need to stop working. Next comes Social Security disability insurance. I think people have heard of this a little more. And when people say I need to go on disability, I think this is what they think about the most. So Social Security disability, again, is something that you've paid into through your Social Security payroll taxes, and you're entitled to it if you meet the standards of Social Security. Those standards can be pretty rigorous, even more rigorous than the other ones, the other policies I was just talking about. Under Social Security standard, and I'm not a Social Security attorney, but I can be a little bit dangerous with my information, so I'll give you a little bit of just overarching details. Under Social Security standard, you need to qualify for those benefits. You need to be disabled for longer than 5 months, and you think it'll last a year or longer. and it's disability from any gainful occupation in the national economy, which is a pretty tough standard. Not deterring people from applying, just saying that it can be a tougher standard, and a lot of people get rejected when they first apply for Social Security. I think that only 1/3 of Social Security applicants get approved. So bear in mind, it can be a long process. You apply online, it can be a long process, and then you can appeal a rejection of benefits. And then finally, there's workers' compensation. This workers' compensation is for work-related injuries. All of the other 1 through 5 that I just listed on this slide, it does not have to be a work-related injury, even for the employer-sponsored disability insurance. It can be anything that takes you out of work. So for workers' compensation, though, it has to be a work-related injury, some kind of injury sustained on the job or is related to your work. So check your state for that, because they vary, those benefits vary from state to state. And check with a workers' compensation attorney if you think you have a workers' compensation claim. Okay, so I'm gonna reduce that size and move on to the next slide, which has a little bigger font. So this, I wanna pull it together for you and just explain how they interact. So a lot of times when you apply to one of these sources, you're also going to be applying to the other sources. You don't have to pick one. You can actually apply for all of 6 of those that I listed on the previous slides. You can apply for your employer's short-term and long-term disability policies. You can apply for state disability at the same time, workers' comp and Social Security, and your private disability policies at the same time. However, benefits can be coordinated, is what they call it. So in other words, your employer's long-term disability policy may provide, for example, 60% of your income. And let's just say, to make the numbers even, you make $100,000 a year. That means that the benefit would be $60,000 a year or $5,000 a month. But it's coordinated with some of these other sources, depending on the language of that policy. And so if you get Social Security, and let's say Social Security gives you $2,500 a month, then your long-term disability benefit from your employer would be reduced by that $2,500 a month. So your long-term disability insurer would pay you $2,500 a month, and Social Security would pay you $2,500 a month. So you're still getting that 60% of your income, but it may be coming from a variety of sources. Okay, I think people are surprised by that, which is why I wanted to make sure there's a slide on it. It's usually your income is not going to achieve 100% of what you were earning when you did not have your disability. Okay, so what are the steps? Your doctor says you really need to stop working. So you have a supportive doctor and you decide to, okay, I need to take a break. I don't know for how long, but I need to go out on a disability claim. So the first thing you want to do is talk to your HR department, or if it's a small employer, the head of your company, and ask for the short and long-term disability application forms, and also ask for a copy of the policies. Your employers are required to give these to you under ERISA. They're required if you make a written request, but a lot of employers just have them ready or have them in PDF. They can email them to you. It's really easy, but you want to get those policies because the policies are the contract. They explain how you apply, how long you have to apply, what you need to provide as proof. So you want to get a copy of the policies and get a copy of the application forms. You also then need to fill out the forms. So typically short and long-term disability application forms are a page or 2 for you to fill out, a page or 2 for your doctor to fill out, and a page for your employer to fill out. I'm here to deliver the message that you do not need to be constrained by those boxes on that form and that one page. If you're anything like my clients over these last 18 years, your disability is complicated and it cannot be explained in 2 lines on a form. So think outside the box and put your answers on a separate sheet of paper if you need to. Use as much space as you need to. Under ERISA, everything you submit must be considered by the insurance company. So don't let them trick you into thinking that you just have to fill out a 2-page form and everything's going to be fine and easy to approve. That's really not the case. And if you feel overwhelmed by that, I'm just going to mention this a few times. There are a lot of ERISA attorneys who can give you some advice, who can do a consultation or can even take over the process for you, and you should reach out to one. You don't have to do it alone if you're not capable of doing it alone. And then make sure your employer knows that they need to fill out a form verifying your income and job duties. It's not an adversarial process with your employer. Your employer typically does not have any role in the decision making over whether you get approved for these benefits. So just coordinate with them to make sure they know your last day of work is the same as what you put down as your last day of work, and that they're putting down all your income. Make sure that they know they're going to have to return that form. You don't need to disclose to them the nature of your disability, of course, because of HIPAA, but you can, let them know it's coming. Okay. All right, so finding a supportive doctor. I've mentioned this a couple times now, and I want to emphasize it again, because as I'm sure so many of you have come to find out and be disappointed by, there is bias among physicians. And there has been, I'll just give you an example. I have a client who came to me 6 months after a COVID infection. So she's a long hauler, and she has said to herself, I'm going to do my best to work 6 months. And if I can't do it, then I'm going to explore disability. So this was September that she came to me. She got infected in March. And she was still not able to get through a full day. She, maybe if she had to do something that required using her mind the next day, she couldn't. She had to rest. It was so fatiguing and disabling. She could do simple tasks, but the hard ones, the accuracy was just not there, both because of the fatigue and the brain fog, the cognitive impairment. Her doctor, who is her internist, and I'm hoping this is changing, but her doctor was not particularly supportive. Her doctor didn't understand why she was continuing to experience these symptoms. I think this is going to change really rapidly as the research comes out. And you guys really need to be commended for your advocacy work and getting the word out that long COVID is a thing, and it really affects people, and it can be quite disabling. But you need to find a supportive doctor to do your disability claim, okay? So with my particular client, we didn't ask her to fire her doctor, but what we did do is we sent her to another one to get a second opinion. We sent her to a neuropsychological evaluation with a neuropsychologist. A neuropsychologist it runs you through a battery of tests that can last several hours. And what they do is they measure cognitive impairment in an objective way. So they measure if you're having this brain fog, and they, run all these tests, and they use statistics to analyze and prove that what you say you're experiencing is indeed what you're experiencing cognitively. So that was instrumental to her, and she actually got approved. Happy to say, she got approved for her disability claim. So now we're in the continued arduous process of providing updates, which we're happy to do. But you really need to get a doctor who understands it and who can agree that these are your symptoms. And even if they're self-reported, they are reasonable. And the doctor agrees that this is reasonable for long COVID. You might want to talk to an infectious disease expert. You might want to get in touch with people at a clinical trial or this, Mount Sinai Center for Post-COVID Care. They have a bunch of resources. I list the UCSF clinical trial here because it's here in the Bay Area, and I'm hoping that they're going to start publishing soon. But there are so many going on right now. So you can actually educate your doctor too, right? Provide them with the medical literature documenting in the CDC printout what is long COVID. If they don't know, you can do some education. I also mentioned on here something called a functional capacity evaluation. Probably most of you have not heard of that, but let me explain what it is. A functional capacity evaluation is typically administered by a physical therapist. And the physical therapist runs you through a battery of tests that don't seem particularly relevant to most people's place of work, but ultimately does a good job of displaying how fatigue has impacted your body. So for example, you may have to climb stairs, 4 times, and then they'll measure your heart rate before and after, and they will also observe your body mechanics. And whether we know it or not, people, when they are fatigued, have a breakdown of body mechanics and sometimes involuntary movements like muscle twitches that happen when you're overexerted, when your body is overexerted. And if you're experiencing fatigue as part of your long COVID, then a functional capacity could show that in an objective way. So Google it for your area, functional capacity evaluation. There's one here in the Bay Area that I really like. I mean, if you need a resource and you need to help you find someone, just let me know and I'll see if I can find someone. But a functional capacity evaluation could provide that quote unquote objective evidence that insurance companies often like in order to document conditions that are based on fatigue. Okay. All right, so let me talk a little bit more about the application forms, what to include. And I'm just going to tell you what I include because I believe in being over-inclusive rather than under, because I want to give every reason to approve a claim. I'm not trying to withhold information. I'm trying to offer a buffet of reasons why somebody should be approved for their disability claim. So again, top pointer, don't limit yourself to the space provided on the forms. Give a very detailed account of what limits you. It could be a letter. It could be, dictation. Type it into your phone and send the phone note or whatever. Also, be very honest about your limitations. We have a hard time doing that as a society because we are trained to be very positive about what works rather than focusing on what is not working in our lives and in our bodies. So, this is not the time for you to be positive about your symptoms and overly optimistic about progression. This is the time for you to say the things that are hard to admit, like how difficult it is for you to get through a meeting, how you've been making mistakes at work, how you can't sleep through a full night, or maybe you sleep so much and need to take naps throughout the day or are falling asleep in the midst of meetings. Even if it's embarrassing, you need to be honest about it on these forms and in your separate statement that I've encouraged you to put together. You can also list how long it takes you to complete some basic tasks because you'll be surprised, or maybe you won't be surprised. Maybe you already realize this, but when you are slowing down because of fatigue and pain and cognitive impairment and other things as well, you are taking longer to do things like wash the dishes. And if you can analyze that in a comparative way, such as previously I used to blaze through the dishes because I have 4 kids and I didn't have time to stand at the sink, or whatever. I mean, I have 4 kids, so that's how I feel. You don't have time to do things but now you have to take the time because you can't move fast because it's too tiring. It's too painful. Or perhaps when you do a task, you then have to sit down or nap afterwards, even if it was a mundane task that you just did. You also want to provide your medical records. This is not going to be asked for on the forms necessarily. Insurance companies will give you an authorization form which authorizes them to get your medical records. But in my experience, often insurance companies are not as thorough about getting these records as we would want them to be. So if you want to make sure that they see what's in your medical file, request it and submit it. And I always request from a few months prior to a disability going forward. So like if you came to me now in December 2020, I would request your records from January 2024 because I also am building a story, right? A story of, look, this is someone who didn't have any medical visits or only had medical visits for these reasons. And then now look at how often this person needs to get medical care. This is how serious it is, right? So get like a little bit back in time so that you can build your story of how different your life is now. And this is really part of this in bold here on the slide, that what I say is paint the picture, okay? So, when I take my clients' declarations and I will ask them, not just what's daily life for you now, that's important, but I want to paint the full picture. Right? I even talk about what kind of student were you in high school, and I talk about what is your personal life like, and I get these wonderful stories. I love learning this about my clients, but they're just people are so amazing and motivated and do these wonderful things. Maybe they travel or they camp a lot, or they go fishing, or they pride themselves on being able to juggle kids and work, all these wonderful details about who they are as a person. And then you go into the hard part of your narrative, which is explaining how life is different for you now, right? How maybe you don't have time to even spend meaningful time or do a puzzle with your kids because you're so wiped out from working that you sleep as soon as you get home or as soon as you're done for the day. So paint a full picture and give those details from what kind of person you were pre-diagnosis to post. Also provide a job description. I think that claims handlers at insurance companies often don't know, and you have to educate them what kind of job you did. And annotate it too, like add additional details if it's not on the formal job description from your company, to describe what you really did in a day. And then right next to it, describe what you are limited from doing now because of your disability. You can also get letters from people who know you, that may be coworkers, who say what a great employee you were, what a great coworker you were. Again, it's not an adversarial process with your employer, so there should not really be an issue with you getting letters of support from your colleagues. And then from friends, family, neighbors, people who can say things like, she used to be out all the time gardening, and I haven't seen her in her lawn since the diagnosis, or whatever is applicable for your life, to describe this before and after contrast. And you also want to ask letters from your doctors. So it's not just the medical records, but ideally your doctor can provide a narrative summary of your diagnosis, your treatment, and what is likely headed down the road for you. And it can be your doctor, it could be a nurse, it could be a physical therapist, chiropractor, neuropsychologist, you name it. Anyone with medical expertise who's been treating you, it's great to get their input. And then also any of these independent type exams that I was mentioning. So functional capacity evaluation, neuropsychological examination if you have cognitive impairment, electrocardiogram if you're having heart palpitations could be very helpful. Just submit that from the outset to make it easier. And I put in a tip box on the right of the slide to remember that insurance is a business, right? And the claims handlers can be very nice and really good at customer service. It doesn't mean that they're looking for ways to approve your claim. So just kind of bear that in mind, and I wouldn't trust that they're going to do the work for you. I would do it. I encourage you to do it on your own or with an attorney and submit it rather than expecting that the insurer will find a way to get you approved. It's very different from like when you have a car crash and you make a claim under your auto insurance or a homeowner's insurance claim. Disability claims can be a little bit more of an adversarial process between you and the insurance company. It shouldn't be. And in fact, there's a requirement that these insurers are supposed to act in your interest as fiduciaries, but that's not always what happens, okay? All right, so what do you do when you're talking to your doctor and you're trying to balance this between someone who's trying to get better and someone who's also filing a disability claim? I want you to bear in mind that when you start this process and you file a disability claim with any of these sources of disability, that your medical records are going to become part of your record, right? So I tell my clients, this is sort of like a summary of what I tell my clients, which is assume that the insurance company is in the room with you when you are seeing your doctor. It's a weird assumption, it's strange to envision that, but you really need to, because you don't know what your doctor's going to pick out and write down from what you've just chatted about for the last 15 minutes. So if you chat about, everything has been great, it's so much better, and yeah, I still, sleep for 16 hours a day, but I'm so happy with this progress. Your doctor's going to write patient is improving, okay? And then that's going to be hard for you when it comes to your disability claim. So if you're doing better, fantastic. But again, don't go to your doctor to emphasize the positive and hide the negative or minimize the negative. You really need to Be honest about your limitations. And, you know, it's great to have a positive attitude. We all need that. Mentally, we need that. But your doctor can't write down an accurate note unless you are emphasizing the things that limit you, okay? So don't be stoic. Don't be the tough guy. You need to, maybe even beforehand, write down a list of things that are hard for you. You know, like if you're having a hard time with activities of daily living, which is taking a shower, brushing your teeth, getting food prepared for yourself. If these things are hard for you because of your disability, you need to tell your doctor about it, because that's pretty serious, right? So you don't want to go in and be the non-complainer, be like, yeah, you know, it's hard, but I manage. That's socially appropriate conversation, but it's not what is going to be helpful for your disability claim or for your doctor to help give you the best treatment, okay? And also, please remember that your emails are part of your medical record. This is for the good and potentially for the bad, right? So I think people forget that when they're emailing their doctor that it becomes a record. And so they may say things in an email more casually or flippantly than they would have said in a more formal setting than email. But the emails are part of your record. So why I say it's a good thing is because it gives you an opportunity to update your doctor on your symptoms, right? So, you know, you're not going to be a pest if you're emailing your doctor to say, I just want to give you an update that this week, you know, my fatigue has been, you know, affecting me in the following ways. I was not able to do the following things. Hopefully next week will be better. I don't know, I'll check in with you next week, something like that. Feel free, because then that's going to provide an ongoing record that will be very helpful to someone like me who's looking to help you get your disability benefits. Also, be sure that your doctor fills out those forms carefully on the application or any other forms that come from the insurance company. Doctors, and who can blame them, right? But they hate filling out these forms on the whole, because this is not why they went to medical school, to fill out these forms. So they can often sort of like rush through it and make some mistakes that could be devastating to your claim. So, you know, for example, a lot of these forms have tick boxes on it that can be relevant to you, like how long can the patient sit or stand or lift 10 or 20 pounds in the course of an 8-hour day. And the doctor may just check, 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 check without thinking about it. Well, if your doctor checks, for example, no limitations in lifting 20 pounds or no limitations in sitting, which is, you know, not unreasonable for someone to say, but that could result in a claim getting denied, because these check boxes are on there because they're linked to the Dictionary of Occupational Titles definitions for what is sedentary ability for work versus light ability for work. And if you can sit generally 6 out of an 8-hour day and lift 10 pounds frequently and reach, then according to those standards, you may be capable of sedentary employment. It doesn't ask about fatigue or need for rest. So just like I've asked you to think outside of those boxes on your forms, you need to ask your doctor to think outside of those boxes. I would rather have a doctor bracket the whole irrelevant section of check, 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 check boxes and say not applicable, or able to do some of these things, but must be spaced with rest periods. Or she can sit, but she needs to be able to lay down and nap as needed. So just one sentence there or an NA will help that form be accurate and will help get the benefits approved. And also make sure your doctor knows what kind of duties you do in your job, right? Like if you are somebody who has to lift 50 pounds because you're a machinist and your doctor doesn't know that, your doctor should, because that'll help them to evaluate whether you can physically do the duties of your job. So a few other tips. Social media is such an important part, especially if you're stuck at home. Social media becomes a very important part of everyone's lives. I want you to check your privacy settings after you're done with this seminar, please. check your privacy settings and make sure that when you post, it's not public, because this is the first place insurance companies go now. They go to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and any other platforms that they can find to try to prove that you're a fraud. I will tell you, in 18 years of history, I have not had a client who is fraudulently applying for disability benefits. For the reason I said at the beginning of this, people do not want to. Nobody envisions this for their life, right? But insurance companies, for whatever reason, take the opposite approach. They sort of assume that by default that people are fraudulently applying. There's a real dissonance between my experience and what insurance companies do. But I'm telling you, they will investigate everybody as though there's fraud, including by checking all of your social media. So please make it private. Google yourself, see what comes up. And also be aware that surveillance can happen sometimes too. And so obviously be honest. If you are somebody who, takes daily walks as part of your recovery effort, your therapy, your mental health, whatever, put that on the form. Don't hide it, right? Because if somebody does surveillance on you, it's fine as long as your forms align with what is observed. And if you return to work, notify the insurer right away. That's sort of obvious. If you receive an award of other benefits, notify the insurer right away, because like I said, those benefits are going to be coordinated and you don't want to get into a situation where you owe a bunch of money to the insurance company. All right, so here are the timelines. This is more for reference, but I just want you to know that under ERISA, when you apply, there's a total of 105 days that the insurance company has to give you a decision on your claim for disability benefits. If there's a denial, you have the right to appeal that denial within 180 days. Now, because it's the pandemic, thankfully, the Department of Labor and EBSA have agreed that that 180-day timeline is told until 60 days after the outbreak ends. So that's really good, but that's not going to be forever, knock on wood. So you submit your appeal, and then the insurance company has to give you a decision on your appeal within a maximum of 90 days. And if they deny it again, that's when you can go to court. All right, so what happens if your claim is denied? So you filled out your application, did it on your own. This is the stage when most people hire an attorney, is at this stage if your claim is denied, because the process of appealing the benefits is daunting, and it's also critical, because in court, if you actually have to file a lawsuit and go to court, you're limited to the evidence that you put forth in the claim file before the lawsuit started. So this is sort of your last shot to get in any evidence. So if you didn't get those experts or neuropsych exam or functional capacity exam, whatever, this is the stage where you sort of need to do it, or else you're not going to have another chance. So the first thing you want to do is send out a document request to the plan. And when you ask for plan documents, this is to the insurance company, you ask for the plan documents, a summary plan description, so you make sure you have a current copy of the policy, also your claim file, and all other documents relevant to the claim. But you need to ask for them, because in my experience, insurance companies don't necessarily hand them over without a specific request. So ask for surveillance, ask for their claims manuals, ask for their claim notes. You will get them, but you need to ask for it, okay? So don't just ask for the claim file, ask for all of these other things in writing. Next, you want to review that claim file, and you want to look for any inaccuracies, gaps, bias, because you need to know what you need to rebut, right, in your appeal. So go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And then you want to submit everything possible that you didn't submit already. Updates to the letters from people, updates from your doctors, more medical records, video evidence. I had one client, I thought it was really effective, where she showed me, she took a video 3 months after Christmas, and she showed me around her house where all her Christmas decorations were still up. And she said on the video, she said, and there were papers everywhere and everything, she said, I have not had the energy to put away my Christmas decorations from 3 months ago, or to deal with these stacks of papers, because I'm so tired that I don't have the energy to do these kinds of things. I thought it was really compelling. So you can submit photos, videos, anything you want, research and articles, you name it, just go for it. Submit everything. Submit it on time. I talked about that 180-day deadline and that there's a current extension because of the pandemic. But if you miss the deadline, then you will lose your right to file a lawsuit. So you have to hit the deadline, okay? I can't emphasize it enough. You have to hit the deadline. If your appeal is denied, that's when you get to go to court. And at this point, you really do need an attorney. If you've been managing it yourself the whole time, you need a lawyer to file your lawsuit in federal court. And do it right away also, because there can be limitations, time limitations on your ability to file. They vary from case to case and from insurance policy to insurance policy and state to state. So you need to contact a lawyer right away, right when you get the final denial letter, if not earlier. Okay, so let's assume that didn't happen and instead you filed your application and your claim got approved. Congratulations, that's great. It doesn't mean that it's going to be an easy road, unfortunately. You really need to keep seeing your doctor at regular intervals. You really need to maintain the communication, send those emails with updates I was telling you about, have virtual appointments, it's fine. I'm not expecting you, no one's expecting you to go, risk further exposure or wear yourself out through an in-person appointment just to satisfy insurance needs. Virtual is totally fine. You will get requests for updates from the insurance company. You need to open your mail. You need to open your mail and look at those, because if you don't respond to them on time, they'll just stop paying your benefits. So usually a request comes and they give you 30 days to submit an update. You can ask for an extension, and you probably should, because it can take some time to get the appointment with your doctor and get the forms filled out the right way. Again, be aware of surveillance possibilities and keep those social media settings private. Keep it private, okay? I mentioned some of this basic Social Security information earlier, but I put in this slide so you have a link to where you apply online for Social Security benefits. And it just gives you a little more information, so it's a resource for you. There are lots of Social Security attorneys out there too, and I encourage you to just kind of look in your area for Social Security attorneys, especially if you've been denied. A lot of attorneys take it after the initial application. And you have a really short window for appealing a denied Social Security claim, so you should reach out to a lawyer right away if you get denied Social Security benefits. And then finally, I have some resources here for you that I have relied on for my article and for this presentation, so that you can perhaps print some of these and bring them to your doctors or read them. And hopefully that'll provide some education to the people who you are dealing with. And now, Allison, I think I'm ready for questions. So I'll stop my share.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That was fantastic.
Sure.
All right. Before we get into questions, I just briefly wanted to talk about my experience with disability, because so much of what you said resonated with me as a person with post-viral ME/CFS who has been through the disability process. And now we are seeing it happen with long COVID folks. And I just wanted to say, you touched on this really briefly, but I've been sick for almost 7 years now. It took me almost 5 to get on disability benefits. And once I did, my quality of life improved significantly, because before that, I was pushing my body so hard every single day to go to work, even at the end, just 10 hours a week, and I could do nothing outside of those 10 hours. I would come home and be in bed the rest of the time. My husband had to do everything. I could not do anything else except go to appointments because I had to. And when I got approved for SSDI, I was able to very slowly start to do things that improved my quality of life, like see friends occasionally, or go outside with my dog on my mobility scooter regularly, because I did not have to save 110% of my energy to do work that I struggled to get through the day to do, a 4 or 5 hour shift in a wheelchair. So
Absolutely.
I
Thank you
just,
for sharing that because I think it's so important that people know that there are options and you're living proof of that.
yes. And something else about my story that I shared on a Twitter thread that I think is important is um, I got sick with mono. That was my viral infection. I seemed to be sort of better at this 6 month mark. I got a full-time job. And I worked for about a year and I pushed myself and I just majorly crashed at the end of that. And I ran out of sick leave and no one told me to apply for long-term disability. I had a private policy. No one told me. HR didn't tell me. I didn't know to reach out to a lawyer. I didn't know to reach out to my local independent living center, disability advocates. So I put in my 14-day notice to leave my job. And I realized literally on the last day of that 14 days that I should not have done that and I should have applied for my private long-term disability policy. And I was out of luck. So looking back, I could have been on a long-term private policy had I been counseled correctly, had I had access to the right information, which is why I wanted to do this event and so much. I think it's so important. And I hope that long COVID folks can learn from my mistakes, can learn from what you've taught us, and have a better experience from the beginning.
Oh, I totally agree. And it's not the case in every state, but I want to encourage people too that although insurance policies generally give a really short window for applying, like 30, 60, 90 days or something like that after your last day of work, in some states, there's what's called the notice prejudice rule, which means that you actually can submit a late application. And as long as the insurance company wasn't harmed by that late application, they have to consider it. In California, we have one of those rules, which is great. I have been able in the past to help people get approved for benefits like 3 years retroactively. If, for example, I had one person not realize that that's why they were failing at their job was because of a disability. And then like 3 years later, when they got the appropriate diagnosis, they put two and two together and then we were able to get them on disability. From state to state, but Google it and see if you can perhaps submit a late application in your state.
Okay, that's great information.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into Q&A. These are questions that have come in from the Body Politic group and various others. So our first question is, with long COVID not yet recognized as a medical diagnosis, is it better to try to explain and substantiate your condition as long COVID in a disability claim, or instead focus on symptoms and other more established diagnoses like post-viral syndrome, ME/CFS, and POTS?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The forms do ask for an ICD-10, and so your doctor probably would put in some kind of like post-viral or something like that, or even perhaps chronic fatigue if you meet the criteria, which do have to be demonstrated over time to meet that criteria. So it's possible that may be there, but as the ICD-10. But I really do encourage people to emphasize the symptoms because truly the cause of a disability is not a diagnosis. The cause is the symptoms that you are experiencing. So as we all know now with COVID, some people don't have symptoms and other people do, and everybody experiences them differently. So your doctor and you do need to focus on the symptoms. And also your doctor should say, this is a good historian. This is somebody who's not displaying signs of symptom magnification. This is not somebody who has secondary gain. This is somebody who is legitimately reporting these symptoms and is believable in that report. So tell your doctor all your symptoms and yes, focus on the symptoms when you're making a claim.
That's great advice. I just wanted to touch on this idea of talking to your doctor and getting doctor support on the disability claim. So one of the reasons that I really struggled to actually take the step to apply for disability is I had a doctor that I felt was on my side, but wasn't really, because when I came to him to say, I cannot keep up at work, he had signed many papers for medical leave. And I said, I think I should apply for long-term disability. He laughed at me, like in person in our appointment. He laughed and he was like, you're 21 years old. You're not going to get approved. No. So
Well, that's
that's why I didn't apply. And I know I say this because I know so many long COVID patients are out there who are struggling to find doctors who believe them right now. And there are so many challenges to accessing doctors who do believe you. So I just wanted to say for the long COVID patients who are listening to this, if you don't have a doctor that's an ally for you right now, there are things that you can do. Like watching this video is a great example. You can educate yourself to know the steps that need to be taken. You can take steps as an individual, as a patient, to start collecting this information while you go through the process of trying to find a doctor who is an ally. I know a lot of those allies have long wait lists. A lot of the post-COVID clinics have long wait lists to get in. So there are steps that you can take in the meantime while you're waiting to get into those doctors. And Body Politic also has a list of recommended providers who are allies to long COVID patients. You can also borrow from the other chronic illness doctor lists like Dysautonomia International, ME Action, and other Facebook groups that hold doctors lists, because as we could tell from Cassie's presentation, having a doctor who is on your side to support your disability claim is so important, right?
critical. Yeah, great tips.
All right. Next question. What are your top tips for better chances at short-term and long-term private insurance claims being approved? I know you covered this mostly in your presentation, but any quick ones?
Think outside the boxes. That's my top tip. Don't
Okay.
limit yourself to the spaces on the forms, and be as detailed as possible when explaining your symptoms. And also, don't try to be positive all the time when you're talking with your doctor. Be that in your personal life, but not when you're in your doctor's office.
Yes, that's so important. All right, next question. Um, if my short-term disability claim is being held up, should I wait to file for long-term disability if I think I'll need it?
Wonderful question. And the answer is no, you should not wait. You should not wait. Oftentimes, the short term and the long term departments are totally separate, even if it's the same insurance carrier. So you should go ahead and make that application to get the ball rolling. Now, realistically, if there's a denial of short term, your long term may be denied as well. But wouldn't it be more efficient to appeal them both at the same time? Right? And
Mhm.
that's what we do when somebody comes to us. So if somebody's been denied short term, we appeal the short term while simultaneously applying for long term, and then hope that we can get them both approved at the same time. So start it as quickly as you can.
Great. Next question. For freelancers and self-employed long haulers, what do we need to know, if anything, about filing for short-term or long-term disability?
So self-employed people can have ERISA plans if you have employees. If it's just you, then ERISA is not going to govern. And so if you have a policy, it probably would be a private insurance policy that you purchase separately for yourself. But sometimes the law is, in fact, most times the law is better under private insurance policies than under ERISA. So that's not a bad thing. You can still look into whether you are eligible for state disability benefits and Social Security. So there, it's not like all hope is lost because you're a freelancer or a self-employed individual.
Okay. Next question. If I had gotten COVID because of a work trip and am disabled long term, does my employer have legal responsibility?
This is the workers' comp stuff that I was talking about, right? So if there's a work-related injury, and COVID exposure may be one, then you should talk to a workers' compensation attorney because there could be a claim there. It doesn't mean that you have lost your claim under a disability benefit. I mean, quite the opposite. You can still absolutely apply for disability benefits, regardless of whether it's a work-related injury.
Okay. I know I have a question about workers' comp down below, so I'm going to skip to that while we're talking about it.
Sure.
Could you just talk briefly about how workers' compensation would interact with private? So, like, would you pursue both at the same time, or workers' comp first and then the disability benefit?
Do both, but I think sometimes workers' comp has quicker timelines, like you have to see a doctor within a certain amount of time after your injury. And I wish I was more familiar with it, but it's such a nuanced area of law and specialized area that I don't know the rules, and they do vary by state to state. But
Okay.
How it interacts in terms of the offsets, though, is that some of your workers' comp award that you may receive could be an offset against your disability insurance benefits, but some of it could not. Like if workers' comp provides you with a certain amount of money for medical care, that typically is not an offset against your disability policy. So there are advantages to pursuing both workers' comp and disability through your insurance carriers.
And it sounds like it's important to get a lawyer who is in your state because workers' comp does vary state to state.
That is correct. That is correct.
All right, next question. What state should I apply for disability in? I've been sick since March, but moved to a new state in July. And I think this is an important question because we've seen in our support group, I think a lot of people are moving around as they realize they need more help at home.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. So what I would do if it's state disability that you're looking for is apply under both states programs, because the laws may vary from state to state. And if you get rejected, they'll tell you, right? In California, for example, you need a certain amount of quarterly earnings over the last couple of years before you're eligible for state disability in California. If you move, it doesn't mean you've lost that eligibility in California just because you're physically relocated now. If your work history was in that state, you could be eligible for those benefits. In terms of your employer's policy, it does not matter one whit where you live. You're entitled to those benefits regardless of where you are currently living. So do not hesitate to apply for benefits even if you've moved.
Okay, good information. For state disability, if you get a denial, is it normal to go through like appeals process with that?
Yeah, so state in California, for example, it's rather rare to get a denial unless there's a technical failure. Generally in California, if your doctor supports your disability claim and certifies you for disability and has filled out the form, you will get approved. If there is a denial for whatever reason, like you applied too late, there are really quick timelines for applying. If you applied too late, or your doctor didn't fill out the form or what have you, they also give you a really quick timeline for appealing it, and you should, because in my experience with California, at least, the state disability department, which is EDD, they go above and beyond to try to approve people. It's not an adversarial process, unlike the insurance companies that I'm often dealing with. They're looking for ways to get people paid.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. If a short-term disability claim and appeal is denied with an employer-paid insurance plan, does that mean the door is closed to starting a long-term disability claim with the same insurance company?
No, the door is not closed, and you should apply and you should appeal. Could be, you could get a different decision, or like I said before, it could just be an efficient appeal of both of them. And then ultimately, if there has to be a lawsuit, you'd sue for both of those benefits. So keep applying, even if don't. And let me just say this too for a second, Allison. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people get deterred when they get a denial because they assume that that means they're not as disabled as they thought they are, and the insurance
Yep.
company knows best. And it's really not the case in my experience. And it shouldn't be an adversarial process, but often it is, and insurance companies are looking for reasons to deny as opposed to reasons to approve. So don't get defeated by a denial. Still apply for long-term disability, still appeal your short-term disability. And if you don't have the energy to do that, find an advocate who can do it for you.
I think that's such a good point because I think long COVID populations, chronic illness populations that struggle to get their diagnosis, that struggle to be believed by doctors, friends, family, employers, um, folks in that category were already vulnerable to being told like, oh, this is all in your head, this isn't real. And so getting that like more formal in writing denial can just feel like the final nail in the coffin. And in reality, it's exactly what you said. This is unfortunately just how the system works, and it's so important to fight back and appeal.
That's exactly right.
On the topic of getting help from an advocate, at what point should folks be talking with a lawyer? You said for Social Security, oftentimes they don't take clients on until the appeal process. So, at what point do you get a lawyer for private versus public benefits?
My preference is as soon as possible. The earlier somebody gets to me, even before they apply, the earlier I can set up their case to be exactly what I believe it will take to win the case. So I do help people with applications. A lot of people want to do it on their own, which I totally respect, maybe because they don't realize that it should be more detailed than just filling out the forms. I think it's easier, whatever. But most people come to me after they've been denied. That's where most people definitely realize, oh, maybe I'm in over my head. Maybe I need a lawyer, which is great, because if somebody does the appeal on their own and then waits until it's ready for court to find a lawyer, sometimes, at least in my practice, it's really hard to take the case at that point because I haven't been able to help put in the evidence that I need to win the case in court, like all of the medical records, or a thorough appeal or medical research or any of the things that I would do. So I would say as soon as possible, but no later than when you've been denied.
Okay. Do you have any tips for how to find a lawyer that would be a good fit for you? How important is it to get someone local versus, like, say if someone doesn't live in California, but they think that like you're really knowledgeable about this, would it be a bad idea for them to try to consult with you?
Oh no, I'm happy to. I'm even happy to give people information, even if I wouldn't be able to take the case, because I just want to serve this population and help benefit people and help shape the law. And I think if we all have better applications, no matter where you live, then, it's good. It's a good thing. But yeah, in general, my tips for finding a lawyer is you need to fit with somebody because you're going to be interacting with this person quite a bit and you're going to be vulnerable with this person because you're going to be sharing the details of your illness, letting them see your medical records, talk to your friends and family. So you really need to have a good vibe with the attorney and make sure that, it's not, I'd say, a place where you're not going to get personal attention. You want personal, bespoke, like you want a good relationship with somebody. That's the top key in finding your lawyer. Some attorneys do practice in multiple states. And so yes, you should look local as the first stop, but for example, for me, although I'm in the Bay Area in California, I represent many people in Los Angeles and other parts of California, several people along the West Coast and a couple people, further east. So sometimes you can take somebody out of state. So find a lawyer who you think you fit with, and then try to set up a relationship with them. And if not, ask them for a referral to someone who they trust in your area, and then go with that referral. Because attorney referrals, I mean, we as attorneys, we only want to, give a solid referral to somebody. We don't want somebody to be disappointed when they pick up the phone to call an attorney. So trust the attorney referral. There are also some publications that rank attorneys that are helpful. If you're looking for somebody to help you with your ERISA governed disability benefits, you look for employee benefits attorneys or disability benefits attorneys, because it's technically in an area of employment law. Like the Super Lawyers publications, they publish in every region in America, and they have a list of just like the top employee benefits attorneys. That's a good place to start. There are good websites like that.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Building on this, what are the usual costs associated with getting a lawyer for disability benefits? I know it can be common, at least Social Security is more my area, for some lawyers to take like a portion of your benefit if you are awarded. Can you talk about that a little bit?
That's pretty typical in my area too. It's called a contingency fee. And what that means is that the lawyer gets paid if she or he prevails in your case, and that the fee is a percentage of benefits. And oftentimes it's a great relationship for both parties, because if you're out of work and sick and spending a lot of money on health, you don't have hundreds of dollars per hour to pay an attorney by the hour to do work. Other attorneys might have different arrangements, and you can certainly negotiate as to whatever your capability for payment is. If you have something that feels good to you, like if it feels good to suggest a flat fee to help with an application or something like that, then you feel free to suggest it. Lawyers, by our nature, are negotiators, right? So we're always happy to hear good ideas and learn from that and work with somebody, or at least I am. I want to make sure that it's a good fit for for me and for the client too.
Definitely. Okay, we have a few questions from YouTube and then we will be wrapping up.
Okay.
Someone said, I'm reaching the end of 6 months of short-term disability, applying for long-term disability. My doctor initially put NA for RTW date. What does that mean?
Return to work date.
Okay. Because they are saying the prognosis is poor, but the insurance company is requiring a date. I'm unsure how to advise my doctor.
That's a wonderful question. And it's another one of those think outside of the checkbox answers, which is return to work date. What in that case, what I would suggest is that the doctor write unable to estimate at this time, or through 4 months from now and then reevaluate. That's probably the preferred answer. And then every 4 months, 3 or 4 months, it could be 6 months, whatever, like some interval, you're going in and then they certify for another 6 months or whatever, until at some point they start stretching it out to, okay, a year or whatever. I mean, you can be flexible, but if there's a required response, just try to give yourself room. If doctors are saying like a concrete date, like if your doctor is December 22nd today, says January 22nd, mark my words, you will be getting a request from the insurance company that you return to work on January 22nd. So just like try to stretch it out a little bit. However, insurance companies are like fantastic believers in hope. Hope for everybody. Everybody's going to get better. Nobody's going to be permanently disabled. So if you want to, give them a little hope, that's fine. Give them an interval for reevaluation, like reevaluate disabled for 6 months, reevaluate in 6 months, and then just do that as long as you need to.
I think that's such an important thing because my experience with ME/CFS, and I think this is probably the case for a lot of long COVID patients, not because they have ME/CFS necessarily, just the nature of the illness is it's unpredictable and it's fluctuating. So it's really hard to put us in a box on a form to give concrete dates. I remember when I was really struggling to navigate work, everyone kept asking me, when are you going to be back? When are you going to be back? And I was like, I don't know when I'm going to get better. I don't know if I'm going to get better. And my doctors can't answer that either.
Yeah. Well, you may have some good days and some horrendous days too, right? So
Mhm.
it's important for, when I'm telling clients, giving them advice on how to fill out their forms, I say, don't take your best day as how you answer the form. Like pick your average week or month or whatever. Take, how you're feeling on average, or take even your lowest day and report that as your limitations. Because if you're at work, you can't have a week where you're just like, I'm having a bad week, I can't check in. If it's every 2 weeks, that's happening. So, and doctors can say that on the forms too. I mean, I certainly ask them to bracket the entire form and say symptoms fluctuate. Sometimes she can walk and is encouraged to do so. Sometimes she cannot. She needs to rest most of those days. Symptoms fluctuate. It's absolutely fine to say that.
That's great. Okay, last question from YouTube. Can my long-term disability provider require me to apply for SSDI? Would that hold up my long-term disability approval?
Oh, yeah, it's a really good question. And you're hitting on a pet peeve of mine, because personally, I think it's shameful that Social Security benefits offset long-term disability insurance benefits, because what I view that as is a government subsidy to insurance, right? You applied for and you received Social Security benefits, and then the insurance company then takes it from you as an offset. Now, technically, no, they can't force you to apply for Social Security, but then they can estimate an offset if you don't, and that will likely be in your policy, and you likely signed a form saying that that's okay with you. So you probably do need to apply unless you want them to assume or estimate a Social Security offset. If you do apply, then you provide them with regular updates saying where you are in the application process. But it really is a pet peeve of mine, because not only is there an offset typically for your disability benefit, but if you have kids under the age of 18 and they get dependent Social Security benefits, that money is usually an offset too. So the insurance company is taking everything you're getting from Social Security to reduce their obligation to pay you. And, this is off topic, but if you want to ask me about what needs a legislative fix, it's that. Because if we want to make Social Security more solvent and keep the money in the hands of the people who deserve it, stop these subsidies to insurance companies. But I hear the frustration in the tone of that question too, because it's like, why do I have to? Why am I being forced to apply for this benefit? The reason is because insurance wants the money. That's why you're being forced to, sadly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So you said
Yeah.
like they'll estimate an offset and you might have signed something. Does that mean like if you decided I don't want to apply for Social Security, they would like not pay you that estimated offset?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Wow.
Usually, so the way the courts have interpreted these insurance policies is that it's a contract, and it's a contract between you, the person with the disability, and the insurance company. Even though you, the person with the disability, did not negotiate this contract, it was just provided to you as a benefit in your employment, right? You had no say over the terms of the policy. So in this policy, these are contractual terms that courts have said that you are bound to. And one of them, in almost every insurance policy I look at, says that if you don't apply for Social Security or other benefits that you may be entitled to, then they are entitled to estimate an offset for what they think you would have received had you applied for those benefits.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that effective immediately? Do you have like a gap time before that?
There's usually a window and you can communicate, but with Social Security, you have to be disabled for 5 months before you're eligible to apply. So there's, a window at first of at least that period of time. I haven't seen any insurance company, force an offset in the, first several months or even year of receiving the benefits, but at some point you're going to need to apply. Or else they do start to threaten that they will offset your benefits. Absolutely. They threaten to
Wow.
do that.
That's an important question. I'm so glad that
Yeah.
someone submitted it.
Great question. Great question.
All right, so I think it's time for us to wrap up. I just wanted to say thank you so much. I think that this event will be such a valuable resource for long COVID patients who are juggling so much right now with unpredictable, fluctuating symptoms, having difficulty accessing care right now. So I really think that this is a bright spot, a way for them to learn more about this in a concentrated, easy to understand almost hour and a half video that they can, they can take breaks with and come back to. It's here as a resource for them. So I just want to thank you so much on behalf of Body Politic and long COVID patients everywhere.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I've been really pleased to do this for everyone suffering from long COVID. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'm going to attempt to close down this live stream. We'll see how it goes.